Hey, it's Sequoia, and you are tuned into BE The Code with special guest Monique Woodard, partner at 500 Startups. Hi, Monique. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about 500 Startups and how you got involved.
So 500 Startups is an early stage venture capital firm and seed program accelerator based in San Francisco and Mountain View, but also very globally. And I've known 500 and 500 folks for a really long time. My co-founder, Chris Bennett, and Black Founders, his company, Solzy, is a 500 Startups portfolio company. And I also know Deshaun Amira from Maven really well, and they're also a 500 Startups portfolio company. So I've been kind of in the mix with 500 Startups for a really long time. And about a year ago, I was kind of thinking about going down this venture path and really wanting to kind of change the access to capital piece for a lot of underrepresented founders, and came into 500 Startups, started talking to them about things that I was thinking about doing, and eventually talked to Dave and had lunch with Dave McClure, talked to Christine Tsai quite a bit, and got to know her, got to know the rest of the team, and eventually they asked me to join the team as a venture partner and also join the team to build and run a fund dedicated to investing in underrepresented founders.
Nice. So some of your investments have been Blavity, Rojo, Fly. What do you look at when you're looking at a new investment?
So really one of the things that I'm looking at is tech categories that are seeing high growth with Black and Latino consumers, and categories where those consumer groups drive growth and either can be used as the primary group or used as a beachhead group as you grow into other groups. So I'm really interested in areas of fintech, areas of healthcare, definitely consumer-oriented companies where I see these consumers have been underserved by the current options in the market, and where I think there's an advantage to focusing on Black and Latino consumers as a group.
Why do you think it's so important to invest in Black and Latino consumer founders?
So I think it's really important to focus on these two consumer groups because that population is really growing. The U.S. is about to shift to a majority minority, and 56% of the United States demographic will be a person of color, and that includes Black and Latino as the largest part of that group. Black and Latinos have a combined $2.5 trillion in consumer spending power. So there's obviously some really big economic drivers and some big demographic drivers that kind of drive the thesis around the way that I invest. I also think that largely tech companies haven't focused on this group, and as those demographic shifts start to happen and you start to see that kind of change, you're going to see that not focusing on those groups and the needs of those groups from a product level is going to make a big difference in how successful those tech companies can be.
Awesome. Okay, so I know a lot of people are like, how do I pitch Monique? How do I pitch Monique? So we're going to do a sample pitch.
Okay.
And then I want you to critique it and say, yay, that works, or that
okay.
Never sit on my desk. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, ready? All right, so the problem that I'm trying to solve is I go into the hair shop and my appointment's at 12 p.m. and I'm chilling. I might grab my phone. I'm looking at my phone. All of a sudden, I'm looking at a magazine. I look at the clock and it's now 3 p.m., right? So I'm going, why did this woman schedule me for 12 and I'm not sitting in the seat till 3? So the solution for that problem is I created an app that's kind of like if you go into like an In-N-Out burger or like a restaurant and there's like a buzzer to tell you when your turn is ready, right? So what happens is my appointment might be at 12, but I get a buzz 15 to 30 minutes prior to say, hey, she's ready for you. You can come now, right?
Okay.
So this is an exponentially large market. There are 15,000 hair shops in Oakland currently that are servicing this market. And I know it's a multi-trillion-dollar market. Black women are consistently getting their hair done. Currently within the traction space, we've already got Oakland down to maybe about 100 shops. Berkeley, we're nailing into like 50 shops currently. And we launched 2 months ago. On my team is myself. I have a CTO. She has an MBA from Harvard. She did her CS degree at Stanford, and we have been rocking for the past year. What am I missing in this pitch right now? That's it. Oh, I know what I want. I want $150,000 for 10% equity stake.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm going to ignore the viability or not of that product.
Okay.
And focus on the way that you pitched it. It was a little rambly.
Mm-hmm.
I like a really tight pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when people pitch me, they're coming up to me after a conference,
Right.
or they're catching me at some sort of event, and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
So the tighter you can get it, the better, because I probably don't have a lot of time to spend with one person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start to ramble, you're going to kind of lose your audience.
Right.
Your audience being me. And the things that I want to hear about in the pitch are what problem you're solving.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely told me what the problem was. You did that right up front, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
You could get to it a little bit faster and more
Okay.
concise. That's even better.
Perfect.
I want to know what kind of traction you've had, whether this product is on the market and whether you have customers. And I also want to know about your business model. And I would also like to get a little bit into the metrics and the business unit economics,
Mm-hmm.
but we could also potentially save that for a deeper conversation.
Okay.
But you can definitely grab me by saying some big metric that you've achieved that seems interesting and compelling.
Mm.
So if you've made, if you're now at, 10,000 US MRR, monthly recurring revenue,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's going to really interest me. So you should definitely say that. If you've had 100,000 downloads, that's something that's really going to interest me
Okay.
and grab me. So say that. But focus on the thing that you think is going to grab the investor and the thing that's interesting. And maybe it's the metrics and the traction, the achievement,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it's something that you're doing from a product level. Like maybe you're doing something really interesting with AI, or maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
doing something that's a little bit unique and different.
Mm-hmm.
So try to make yourself stand out in that way.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we know that you were the founder of Black Founders.
Mm-hmm.
We know that you worked for the San Francisco mayor's office, or we may not know that, but now we do.
No, you do.
So how did you get involved in venture capital?
So I've been in tech for a really long time. I started in tech about 15 years ago. And I started out just building things on my own and figuring out how to make them make money. So really just bootstrapping things that I thought were interesting, and just figuring out how to make it work. And I eventually moved to San Francisco in 2008. A company recruited me because they saw me building out these performance marketing campaigns, and they saw me also building out the product side of performance marketing, and they asked me to come do that here. So I moved here in 2008, worked for them for a while, for about a year or two, started this app called Speak Chic, and at the same time started Black Founders with my friends Chris Bennett and Hadia Mujahid and Nana Kuku, because we were noticing that the Black people and the Black founders that we knew in the industry just weren't that visible.
Mm-hmm.
It was often hard to kind of figure out who was who.
Right.
So we started that as, one, a way to build community, but then two, as a way to build up an educational resource around things that you needed to know to start a business and a venture backable business in Silicon Valley. And that really expanded across the U.S. to cities like New York and Atlanta and Austin and Chicago and HBCU campuses. So it really took off in a way that we were not necessarily expecting, but it was definitely filling a need that was in the market. And then, of course, I went into the mayor's office of civic innovation and worked on open data and worked on municipal broadband access and things like that. And as I was coming out of the mayor's office, I wanted to turn my attention back to underrepresented founders and really drill in on the funding piece of that.
Okay.
Because you can do all of the community building and all the education that you want to, but unless you figure out the financial piece, that's all for naught. So that's really when I came into 500 Startups and was telling them about what I was doing and how I ended up kind of on the other side of the table. I I don't know that I intentionally went into it saying I want to be a venture capitalist.
Okay.
That wasn't really my intention. And I think when people do that, it's often harder to become a venture capitalist when they really want to be a venture capitalist.
That's very true.
You kind of almost end up falling into it in a lot of ways by doing a lot of things that venture capitalists tend to do, which is I was already mentoring founders and saying, oh, you should apply to 500 startups, or you should apply to YC, or you should do this with your company. So I was already doing those things through my role at Black Founders, and then but through that I kind of found myself having a lot of deal flow, which is kind of the lifeblood of any good VC, and then eventually finding my way into being an actual VC.
Awesome. Perfect. So we're going to play a game.
Okay.
2 truths and a lie.
Oh. Okay. All right.
So you're going to tell me 2 truths and 1 lie, but you're not going to tell me which is which, and then I'm going to guess which one is the lie.
All right.
Ready?
Sure.
Go.
2 truths and a lie. I grew up on a farm.
Okay.
I used to work for Luther Campbell.
Okay.
I moved to New York and started a company that delivered fresh meal delivery to senior citizens.
Okay. I'm going to go with you moved to New York and started a mail company that delivered fresh mail to senior citizens.
Yes, that is the lie. That was too easy. I made it too easy for you. I just went down my resume and didn't mention that, so I made it way too easy for you.
But tell me about you living on a farm. That's so interesting.
I grew up in Florida, so my family is a family of farmers, and I grew up on a farm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, with cows and pigs, and
Were you farming?
I did not farm. I was a child. We've got laws against that.
And then you working for Luther Campbell. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Luke Records was one of my first internships out of college. I went to school at University of Miami and lived in Miami for 8 years after that. And my major was music business and entertainment studies. And I was an intern for Luke and ended
Wait, are we talking about Uncle Luke?
We're talking
like
about
Scar?
Uncle Luke. Scars, yes.
Like, kept me coming.
One of my favorite songs, by the way.
Oh my goodness, that is so funny. Okay.
And so I did a lot of like advancing of his shows.
Okay.
And then I got decently good at that and ended up like helping him book shows. So.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Fun facts.
Yeah.
So how do people find you?
So I have a website, so they can find me at moniquewoodard.com. They can also find me at 500startups.com. And in lots of places, lots of conferences and cities where, I end up showing my face.
Perfect. Well, Monique, thank you so much for coming and hanging with us today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. It's Monique Woodard, 500 Startups partner with BE The Code.